Hello, my name is Teresa and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be my November wrap-up. I read a total of, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 books this month, and 2 of them were ebooks. So let's just kind of get into it because while I don't have a lot of things to say, I babble. So we're going to go with it. And then hopefully all my reviews for these books should be up before this video goes up. But if not, they will be up shortly, and I'll be sure to let you guys know when that happens. Let's start off with the 2 ebooks that I read, and then after that we're just going to jump around depending on which book I pick up from the stack. So the first book I read in the month of November was After We Collided by Anna Todd. This is the second book in the After series by Anna Todd. In the first book we follow Tessa Young as she kind of enters her freshman year of college. She moves into the dorms and is expecting like this wonderful, very pristine life. She has her entire life planned out, has perfect grades, has the perfect mother, has the perfect boyfriend, and then she meets tattooed, covered Hardin Scott and realizes that maybe perfect isn't what she's looking for, and that the life that she has planned out isn't the life that she wants. I ended up giving this a 2 out of 5 stars, 2 out of 5 being the most generous I can give it. The only reason why it's getting 2 and not 1 is because the storyline itself is very addicting. I had a hard time putting it down despite the very toxic nature of it all. I felt so I read the first book without having read the fan fiction first, and then afterward I had picked up the fan fiction and read it up until book 3, which is when the fan fiction officially stops. And then we continue on with, I think, book 4 and 5, or just book 4. I don't remember how far those books go out. I feel like the concept of editing had really gotten lost in the publication from fanfiction to books. I will leave my currently reading down below so you guys can go ahead and check that out and have more of my thoughts on that while I was reading through it. But overall, I was just really disappointed. I knew this book had such a large cult following and that obviously the main plot points and the major plot twists wouldn't be changing anytime soon. However, I expected there to have been a bit more editing going forward with this book. Basically, everything that had happened from the fan fiction had happened verbatim in the book. There wasn't even editing, and I felt like that was a major loss on the publisher's aspect because not even chapters were smushed together. It was literally just everything that happened at once. The only thing that was different was where it started, because I believe the book ended a little later than the fan fiction. It really, there were chapters that didn't have to be there anymore, and I feel like with editing it could have been a fairly solid series, but it was all verbatim from the fan fiction, and I felt like it was, not to sound harsh, it felt like it was really just kind of mocking the publishing system. And I get it that it's not always the best, but people do put their heart and soul into it and work on the editing aspect and getting it down to a perfect T. And then we have this fan fiction that was kind of published without so much of an editor going through it, but it was just, it felt like a big fat ha-ha to the publishing industry, because it was just we want to publish this for the money, for the sake of the movie, when you didn't need to publish it for the sake of the movie. You could have just left it as a fan fiction and just have people read along, because it's just it's not the kind of book that I would pay money to actually go ahead and read. It's just very juvenile, and it bothers me because it has a lot of potential if you just refined it a bit more. I feel like the book could have gone a completely different way as the publishing aspect, and it's just the most frustrating thing as a reader and a writer who has kind of a very loose grasp on the publishing industry and the editing industry and how editing works into making a better novel. It was kind of a bit of a slap in the face, and some of the plot twists, I'm just very tired of using certain things in this book as a way to further the man pain. And some of the trigger warnings that you should be looking out for that I should have mentioned earlier was sexual assault, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, emotional abuse, physical violence, very emotionally abusive relationship, that kind of stuff. And it's just, I'm very tired of these tropes going on and just being really prevalent in older fiction, or about 2012 and up until ish older fiction. And I wish that someone had taken the time and the care to think, hey, we could edit this out and make this a better piece of work, or at least a more tolerable piece of work. Instead they were no, we want the money, publish. And it's It's unfortunate, but what are you going to do about it? The next ebook I read is actually a nice little change from After by Anna Todd, and that is Becoming by Michelle Obama. This is Michelle Obama's debut, I think her debut, nonfiction work of her basically talking about her life from the minute she was like from a young child all the way leading into her as Michelle as we know her today. I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. I love the Obamas. I love that we get to see more of Michelle and see her values and how she grew up and why she is the way that she is. Basically, I love that we got to see her relationship with Obama start from beginning until now and see how much hard work it took for them to get there. Her ability to storytell is absolutely amazing. I think that she had a way of making this very factual kind of based novel into kind of a very easy story that we can follow and move in and out of the events from without much of a rough, I guess is the word you could say, rough transition. I really, you can tell that she never wanted to be a politician's wife, but she was thrust into a position because her husband saw a vision for the world and she believed that vision and saw that he could offer real change and was like, if you can, let's do it, and I want to find a way to change things from my side as well. And I think it's just a very valuable thing, and like to see all the values and lessons they try to teach their kids, despite them growing up literally under the cameras because they were born when Obama was already senator. Like, that's just wild to me. But I definitely enjoy this book and I highly recommend it. And that's coming from someone who doesn't read a ton of like nonfiction, not because she doesn't want to, but because I forget. The next book I read in the month of November was Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. This is Casey's debut novel. I forget their pronouns. I'm gonna go with them because it says she and her on the like author page, but I don't know how accurate that is. Anyway, this is by Casey McQuiston. It is their debut novel, and it follows Alex Claremont Diaz. He is the first son of the United States. His mother is the president, and at one of the royal weddings, he kind of runs into Prince Henry, who they're not the best of friends, but they're not enemies per se. And something happens where they basically ruin the royal wedding. And it looks like they hate each other, and it turns into this fiasco. And in order to avoid this becoming a bigger problem than it already is, they have a publicity stunt to make it look like that these two are the absolute best of friends. And not only do they form a friendship, but they also fall in love. I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed this novel. I found myself laughing and crying along with the characters. The humor lines up with mine quite a bit. I also have a review for this, so I won't go too much in depth, but I will leave the spoiler-free review down below if you guys want to check that out. Like I said, I really enjoyed this book. I laughed, I cried. Prince Henry is literally one of my favorite characters of all time. I think his humor just falls in line more with mine, and it's just absolutely marvelous. My biggest critique is that it felt like it was a little too wrapped up at the end. I recently learned that for a romance novel to be categorized as a romance novel, it has to have a happy ending. So I really just couldn't get away from that, and I'm not complaining. Though the one thing that did kind of, if I had to knock it down a notch aside from like the happy ending that I'm not complaining about, I felt like the plot took a little too long to actually set up, and then by the end it wrapped up the main plot, which is the love story, and we had to wrap up the consequent plots, and by the end I was just like, but why? I feel like those aspects could have been flipped. But like I said, I go in more depth of my feelings and my thoughts in my video, so like check that out if you want to see more. This one should come as no surprise. I made a vlog about it, which I will also leave down below, and that is The Starless C by Erin Morgenstern. This came out November 5th. This is Erin Morgenstern's sophomore novel, and it follows Zachary as he is a grad student trying to write his thesis and uses books as a way to kind of escape the stressors of grad school, which I feel, I'm not in grad school, but I feel. There he finds an authorless book that kind of writes about his life, or a part of his life that he hasn't really talked about with anyone, and because of this he's thrown into this world of books and mystery and meets this wonderful cast of characters. I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. In the beginning I did struggle with this book quite a lot, as you guys can tell by the sticky notes. It was very slow, but that's because I feel like Erin Morgenstern writes in a literary fiction fantasy kind of way. Her writing is very lyrical, and it sometimes will get you very confused very fast. I loved Erin's writing though. She's one of my favorite authors of all time. I think that her writing has such depth and such emotion behind it, and you can tell that every single like word she chose is this labor of love. And I think it's just amazing that this is only her second novel, and it's great. She has improved so much from The Night Circus. The different stories that she involved in this, because it has like our main line, our main plot, and then we have like intercalary stories, I believe is the proper term you can use for it, that kind of weave in. I was really confused in the beginning as to how it was all going to come together, and then later on I realized how it was, and it was like such a satisfying ending. All the stories came together at some point and like made a mention, and it was just such a satisfying thing to read about. I forgot to mention this in my vlog, but there is a male-male romance in here. It is like the most slow burn, but not slow burn romance in the entire world. It's like she managed to do like this weird slow burn insta-love, which I want to be able to do as an author, and I hope I'm doing it correctly in my own novel, because I do have that aspect in there. We also have I believe either a bisexual or a lesbian minor character that we do, or a pansexual character that we do see more. She's a side character in the beginning and then becomes a bigger player later on. The side romances that happened in here were built up so well, and they all read like fairy tales, you guys. Like, it's just so gorgeous, and I loved it so much. I can't get enough of it. Literally, I highly recommend. I can't stop talking about this book so much. I have so many amazing quotes and like so many like little notes and sticky notes, and it's so good. And if you guys haven't read it, please do. It's so good. The next book that I read in the month of November is Dead Girls: Essays on Surviving an American Obsession by Alice Bowen. This essentially is like a collection of essays following this thought process that America has this very sick obsession with dead girls. Like in terms of like true crime and like TV shows, we have that obsession, and we always forget about the girl story. It becomes kind of a whodunit kind of fun thing for someone to do. I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars. I was looking through more reviews as I was reading through this, and I do agree with everyone else's reviews that this was mismarketed. There was only like a couple of, or like the first bit of the essays that actually dealt with the topic that is on the cover. The rest were kind of Alice Bowen's adventure as she figures her way out through like LA and like her family life and all that stuff. And it was not disappointing in a sense, because she is a marvelous writer. Her writing is so well done, and she definitely has a lot of room to grow in the best way possible. And I can't wait to see what other essay collections she has. I think my biggest issue was that it was mismarketed, and it wasn't the kind of story that I was looking for. But I still recommend, and I highly think you should pick it up. I just think that whoever decided to do for the marketing for this should have done better, because I think it was done a big disservice by saying it was one thing, and then when you get into it, it's a completely other thing. And the last book that I read in the month of November was Percy Jackson and the Olympians: Battle of the Labyrinth by Rick Riordan. This is the 4th book in the Percy Jackson series. I'm almost done. I'm almost done with this first chunk of Percy Jackson novels. This essentially follows Percy as he is now a freshman in high school, the little baby. I think he's actually older than me, if I think about it. Yeah, he's older than me by a couple, I think. Technically, he's like a couple years older than me. Technically. As he is kind of, all the stakes are getting higher, and he is stuck in this position of having to save the world again. I ended up giving this a 5 out of 5 stars. I read this it was such a whirlwind read for me. I'm not sure if I remember everything correctly, but there were so many things that happened, and a lot of like build up and a lot of piecing together everything, and like that reveal at the end kind of hurt me deeply. I think it's just a great book, and you can tell Percy's growing up. Percy is becoming this like person that like we all love, and we get to see his progression and his changes. I also really enjoy the fact that you can tell that puberty is starting to hit everyone in this story, because we see what do you call it, Percy and Annabeth start to get like jealous of one another over things, and they don't know what to do with it or how to feel about one another. And I think it's just the funniest thing in the world to see like these kids go through like this awkward, like, I'm starting to think she's pretty, but she's not supposed to be pretty. But that is it for my November wrap-up. I was so close to getting to all my books this month, but then the Starless C came out, and those 2 other books came off of hold from the library, and here we are. I am in the middle of the 2 other books that I did start to read, which was Queens of Innisleer and The Diviners. I'm more than halfway through with them, so they should be included in my December wrap-up, if I ever get to that. Like, if my sanity gives me the chance to stay sane that long. If you guys have read any of these books and want to chat about or want more of my thoughts, leave me a comment or find me on social media. All my links will be down below. And until next time, I'll talk to you guys later. Bye!